Hello, friends. Welcome to the Franki 411 podcast. I'm your host, 𝓕𝓻𝓪𝓷𝓴𝓲. Today, my guest is Emerix, a professional tarot card reader and psychic operating out of Louisiana. I do hope that you will enjoy this interview. I am so thankful to Emerix that she came and joined us on the show. We had a great conversation about her story and about human consciousness in general, obviously my favorite subject. So do enjoy this interview with Emerix. Welcome, Emerix, to my Franki 411 podcast. I'm so glad that you have agreed to come on and be a guest, and I'm excited to talk to you about what it is that you do. So if you could just give a brief introduction of yourself and what you do for the audience.
Okay, I'm glad to be here. Also, I'm excited to be here. Well, I go by Emerix. I'm a 31-year-old Louisiana native. I'm a professional psychic and tarot reader. I've been reading cards for almost 20 years now.
Really?
Yes, working professionally for about 2.
Okay.
Yes. I'm clairaudient, intuitive, empathic, and a medium, but that's a bit of a newer development because it's something I really had to get used to.
Okay. So can I ask you, and I don't want to, if you have more that you want to give, I don't want to interrupt. I am, like I said, a very sort of fluid conversationalist. So you're 31 and you've been doing this for almost 20 years. So you started very young with all of this. Is this something that was a part of your family life, or was this something that you just were interested that young? How did that come about at such a young age?
I was actually gifted a deck of cards from a friend. And the friend is actually now a professional reader as well.
Okay, that's really cool.
I was 11 or 12 years old, and he was only a couple years older than me.
Okay.
But my family was very supportive. They were the kind of family that, like, I got Ouija boards and trench coats for Christmas.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, they weren't weirdos, but they knew that I was, and they supported that.
That is really cool. You don't always see that being the case. A lot of times It's kind of, you're the black sheep a little bit.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So you have been reading tarot cards from that time?
Yes.
So now you said you're clairaudient?
Correct.
And clairvoyant, did you say also?
I've had a few visions. I'm mostly clairaudient, intuitive, and empathic, and a medium.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit then about how did those psychic abilities develop for you? Is that something that, you started with these cards and then things kind of started to come to you? How would you say that developed for you?
Yes. Around 27, actually, I had what I called a spiritual awakening.
Okay.
I was just going through a really stressful time, and all of a sudden I started, hearing voices. And, these voices, it wasn't just voices, it would be like sirens and just these noises, And at first I thought I was going crazy.
Of course, yeah.
And everybody else thought I was going crazy. I was institutionalized. I was diagnosed schizophrenic.
Oh my.
Yes, institutionalized a lot. And over time,
very chaotic situation.
It was scary. It was lonely. It was, yes. But over time, I kind of I'd realized what was going on, because I'd started doing some research and stuff, and I'd realized that I was going through a spiritual awakening. And it was either, get with it and figure out how to handle it, or continue being crazy. So I'd started developing skills like, discernment was important to know which voices were which and who was talking to me,
Sure.
And meditation was important, and, just things like that.
Being able to ground yourself, being able to,
right.
That is really important, being able to discern, okay, what is my normal human physical reality and what is the other realms speaking to me. So can you give us a little information? So this is something that I've experienced just a little bit myself, having just words or phrases pop into my head that I know aren't me. So can you kind of describe a little bit what sort of experience that is like for you. You know, are you hearing a voice that are you able to hear voices that are distinct from your own voice? How does the experience happen for you?
Yes. I immediately knew the voices like weren't coming from me. I
Hmm.
tried to convince myself forever that they were. I tried to convince myself that it was just in my head,
I'm just
you
making it
know,
up.
but yes. But the main thing that I'd realized was that sometimes they would say something and I would repeat back what they were trying to say and I would get it wrong. And they'd say, no, we're trying to say this.
Oh, that's interesting. So
Yes.
you were being corrected.
Right. So
Okay.
if it was my head, I would have known what I said.
Right. And
So that
you
was
wouldn't change yourself and say, no, 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 that wasn't right.
right. Exactly.
That so uh, are there, can you describe, is it, you know, entities, spirits? How would you describe who or what communicates with you?
I hear a lot of things. I hear interdimensional entities, I hear spirits, and sometimes I hear people's thoughts.
Really?
Yes, I've heard
Is
things like before people say them and things like that.
does that is that something that at all affects your relationships? Like if you are closer with someone, is it easier for you to hear thoughts, or is this something that sort of happens spontaneously?
It happens spontaneously, but I've also noticed when it comes to people close to me, I kind of have a psychic block.
Really?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when I do my calls and stuff, I do them over texting. And when I do it with a complete stranger, it's like I'm accurate and I can, blah, 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 I can tell them their whole story. You know what I mean? But when I'm doing it
Hmm.
with a family or a friend, it's almost like my ego wants to put in what I hope for them or what I know they want, or,
Sure. So you
so I
kind of,
can't. Right, right,
it's like a resistance filter of, you know, you're invested in that person, you care
correct,
about that person, so your ability is sort of blocked by the filters that you have.
right, correct.
That's very interesting. So now you said you do this over text. You offer these various different services. Can you talk a little bit about what it is that you offer?
Yes, I work for a few platforms and whatnot. But I'm trying to branch out and like start my own, business and stuff. So I do readings like via everything's kind of going to my email right now. And I just set up a TikTok with a stand store. So I'm trying to get everything to my stand store. But I offer like readings via email, and that's like written out text readings. We can talk on the phone, we can do a Zoom meeting, really anything. I'm just
Okay.
whatever the other person is comfortable with, I could do.
We'll definitely have you send me that TikTok account and your email and information. We'll put that in the description so people can contact you and get with you.
Okay.
What would you say? I mean, do you have maybe something that is, would you say, kind of your niche in terms of assisting people, or are you, you know, kind of run the gamut of, you know, contacting loved ones or reading someone for sort of healing purposes? You know, what's sort of the spread of the things that you assist with?
I really like general readings because like a lot of people come to me and they don't even really know what their question is, but a general reading will basically just let the universe answer that for you. So I
Okay.
can do love readings, I can do career readings, I can do one, question you answer and you pick a card for that, or use my clear audience or whatever. But mainly I like to do the generals because it just gives you so much information, on your life path and your journey and what you're dealing with at the moment.
So are you able to sense then if there are maybe specific entities, whether it's spirits or interdimensional entities that are trying to communicate with someone else?
Yes, I actually had a call recently, and this lady, the first thing she said was like, "What do you pick up for me?"
Hmm.
And I was like, "Well, you have to give me a name because if just go wide open, a lot of people are going to want to talk."
Right.
So I have to kind of like tune in, but yeah, I can tune into people around people, entities around people, just whatever.
Okay. So would you say, can you talk a little bit more about sort of your own experience when you're doing a reading? Like what is your internal experience? How are these things sort of coming to you? How would you describe the way that these things come up? So, if I were to ask you a question about myself, what's happening for you when you are giving a reading? What's your experience?
When I'm pulling cards, it's more like an intuition or a knowing. And when I'm using my clairaudience, I just kind of ask. I just ask, my angels is what I call them.
Hmm.
And they give me pretty clear answers. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes it's a little fuzzy. We've gotten to the point where we have little tips and tricks like yes and no sound very similar, kind of. So like they'll spell out yes. So I'll know it's yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and recently I've been getting like names here and there, which is a new development because at first I wasn't able to like understand names. From what I've gathered, you can only channel what you can comprehend. If the
Okay.
interdimensionals are trying to tell you about quantum physics, if you don't understand quantum physics, you're not going to be able to understand what they're saying.
Okay. So you need to have sort of a knowledge base available to be able to sort of receive the messaging.
Yes,
Okay, that's interesting.
I
Um,
thought so too.
yeah, because you would, well, I mean, I guess if you don't have the vocabulary to describe
Exactly.
an idea or a concept or a process, they can't really send it to you, especially if it's in words.
Hmm.
So when you said you started to sort of have visions and mediumship, do you get any kind of sense that if you're able to maybe receive more clear visuals, that you might be able to use your words to describe what you see, even if you don't necessarily know what you're seeing, or if you're getting a message from, in a mediumship situation, that you might be able to sort of more abstractly sense something and then describe it with your own words, or how does that work for you?
Some things I get in like a mind's eye, I guess you would say.
Hmm.
There's only been a couple of times where I've actually like seen spirits or seen like what they would call shadow people and they've given me messages and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think a lot of people who are clairvoyant like really do like actually see like whatever it is like standing in front of them or I mean,
Okay.
I do get a little bit of clairvoyancy in like the mind's eye sense. Like if like I'm talking to somebody and they want to know about the date they went on, I can like kind of see the date. I can kind of see what the people look like. I can like almost hear the conversation. It's almost like I'm there.
It's kind of a head movie almost. Like if you replay a scene from a movie in your head, it's similar to that kind of experience. So now you said that the mediumship is something that is sort of developing currently.
Right,
So can you talk a little bit about that? That's not something that came with the original sort of chaotic situation, but it's developing.
right. It did, but I blocked it out. I haven't really
Okay.
had much experience with death in my life personally. I've been very blessed. I've
Okay.
only known like maybe 5 people who have ever died,
Okay. So not something
so
that you're personally close to in
right,
terms of grief and that kind of experience.
right. So at first, it was very strange for me to deal with death because I'd never dealt with it before. Here recently, I I've just become, I guess, more open. My clairaudience has been developing a lot more lately. And I think it's because I've recently just had more alone time. I have my own space and stuff like that. So I can like hear more. But like also I've just become kind of comfortable in it. It's been a couple of years now, and I kind of just I was ready to open myself up to a little more after I kind of, figured out the other stuff, you
Right. You
know.
kind of get comfortable on one level and then it's a now we can level
Right.
up a little bit.
Right. So I would call myself more of like a practicing medium. I mean, I haven't had any issues with, people coming through or anything like that, but I still don't want to call myself like an expert or anything because it's it's not I don't want to call it like hard, but I don't know. It takes a lot of like trusting yourself and what you hear. Like I had a call yesterday and this lady asked me to channel somebody and the person immediately started griping at them. She was
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah, she was like, you're being too harsh on that boy. And I was like, ma'am, do you have a son? And she said, I have a stepson. And I said, okay, well, this lady is telling you that I know you're emotional and stressed out with it, but he's a little sensitive right now. You know what I mean? Like you're being a
So
little harsh on him. And she was like, and you need to get off your behind. You're about to have this baby. And I was like, ma'am, are you pregnant? She was like, yeah, I'm about to have a baby. I was like, is this an older relative? She was like, yeah, it's my Nana. I was like, oh,
So
that makes a
you're
lot of
getting a
sense.
very sort of like bossy kind of energy, and you got to sort of
Right,
filter it a little bit because you don't necessarily want to be super harsh with someone.
right. But she
So
understood. She was like, yeah, that's Nana. But
so
that
she
means
understood that the energy might be a little bit kind of
right,
very
but that'll
forward.
show people that I'm really talking to who they think I'm talking to when I'm telling them things in their mannerisms as they would.
So letting sort of that authentic energy come through,
Right.
which I'm sure does help people to say, yeah, that would be my, whoever it is that would be talking to you.
Yes.
Very interesting. And I'm sure for you, there is, like you said, trusting yourself and the intuition and believing that what you hear is what you hear.
Hmm.
I think for a lot of people, so one of the things that I mentioned when we were emailing back and forth is one of the things I like to talk about is just in general human consciousness and also natural human psychic ability, that we all are born with a certain amount of psychic ability or having access to these abilities, but we're sort of trained or conditioned out of them and away from them. And so, I mean, can you talk a little bit about that? Do you agree with that at all? I mean, do you think that you might develop to a point where you would be able to help other people with their own intuition, maybe not necessarily to the point of mediumship or the clairaudience, but to just trust themselves in an everyday life situation, to trust their own instincts and the things that are their truth?
Absolutely. I definitely agree that we are all psychic. I think people have certain specialties, like everyone's different,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely think we're all like psychic. And a lot of it is, I was talking to my niece the other day and I was asking her if she sees dead people. And I was like, well, you can, right? And my mom was like, don't scare her. And it's like that,
How old's
it's
your
like
niece?
she just made 4.
Oh, okay, so very very young. Well,
Yeah,
see,
she's
now
very young, but
that's
she already has her
interesting.
first deck of tarot cards. Like, I talked to her about everything, like I just think if I would have started that young, how like good I would be now.
Well,
You know
and
what
how
I
much
mean?
easier your journey or your transition would have
Right.
been. So,
Especially if everybody around me believed me.
right. Well, and that's interesting, someone that young to because I think that is the instinct of maybe older generations or generally people to, oh, don't scare them, don't say those things. But
Right.
it's only scary if you tell them that it is.
Yes, that's what I told her. I was like, it's only scary because you say it's scary. Kids
Right.
are fearless. They're not scared of anything.
Right. Let them trust their own intuition and their own discernment to know
Right.
what is appropriate for them or what isn't. Don't tell them to be afraid of something if they're not. Let
Right.
them
Right.
follow their own path and figure that out.
Right.
So that is, I mean, that is interesting. You do kind of have to wonder if you had, I mean, it's wonderful you had a very supportive family who like let you go ahead and go full on into the weird, right?
Right.
But it does make you wonder with just human consciousness in general, if we were all more open or allowed children to be more open, what sort of information might they have access to that could really sort of upgrade human society in the sense of, because I do think, and maybe you could speak to this just a little bit in your experience. So I do think that with younger generations and with people who are being more open about their own psychic abilities like yourself, we're seeing a little bit of an upgrade in human consciousness in terms of compassion and open-mindedness and allowing these sort of things, not just outright rejecting them. So I wonder if you could maybe speak a little bit about that in your experience, or are you seeing maybe something similar? Would you agree that things are, I don't know, maybe improving, I guess you could say?
Yes, I absolutely think that. I think we are going through an awakening for sure. I
Collectively.
think, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I can definitely see, like, I mean, the difference between from when I first started doing this when I was 12 and the acceptance even now and the all of the other people doing it, you know what I mean? It seems like we're like an army here to to raise the vibration of the earth. You
Yes,
know what I mean?
I agree with that. That I think that there are some of us that are have always had these interests in these various subjects and these things because we were meant to assist in the upgrade, assist in bringing forth the openness and the compassion. So do you feel a sense of maybe that this was to some degree a purpose or a mission for you, that there is something sort of bigger that's directing you or guiding you to a degree?
Absolutely. And I've always felt that way. I've always been very purpose driven. Um, I don't know. I went to school for psychology when I was 17. I got my bachelor's at like 20 something because I wanted to help people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've always felt this calling to just try to make the world a better place. You know, and I didn't know quite how I was going to do it, but I kind of just like fell into it after my, spiritual awakening, and I kind of got my, footing. I was out of work because I have chronic back problems. I actually just had emergency spinal surgery. I went
Oh,
paralyzed from the waist down.
oh, wow.
Yes, I've been through a lot of suffering, but that rendered me unable to work. And so I was like, what am I going to do? So my
Mm-hmm.
boyfriend was like, why don't you retail for money? And at first, like, I really didn't want to because I was just like, I don't know, that I want to help people. Like, why charge them to help them? But then I realized that not only had I suffered for this, through my spiritual awakening, I had cried and bled and been institutionalized and,
Right.
like
Gone through
that if
hell.
I were, you're right, if I were able to do this full time and make a living off of it, I would be able to help more people in the process.
Right. So, and I think that's something that can be a little so for this is something that I'm sure you could speak to because I did want to talk to you about. I think that for people who are genuine, right? And it's difficult in this realm to find people who are genuine, not just who have genuine abilities and aren't just in it for a dollar, but are genuine in the sense of they do want to help you, right? But
Right.
from the side of the person who's doing it, you also need to be able to support yourself. And you also, and so, there's a certain amount of having to trust the universe in that you were meant to receive for these gifts. It's meant to be an exchange that you
Right.
help people, but also you can receive help. And so I think sometimes for people in your position, it can be a little difficult because you feel I'm not sure how you would describe it necessarily, but maybe there's like a resistance to asking for money for what you do because that's not
Right.
what you're in it for, even though you understand, yes, I need to pay bills, but that I'm in it to help people, and there's a sort of resistance you have to get past.
Right. I kind of get past that by like being very affordable. Like on my stand store, you can get everything from like a yearly bundle, that's a little more expensive to a one question reading for $3.33.
So
I have
you
a
just
budget for
a
everybody.
full gamut so that people can access whatever they're able to.
Correct.
Well, that's awesome that you have that available so that people can, because that can be something difficult too. People might want to just kind of get to know you a little bit and feel out your services too, because that I think probably with your clients is something else, just being able to have a trust relationship between yourself and
Right.
your client.
Absolutely.
Very cool. So, can you speak to or do you have your spiritual awakening that you talked about? Do you throughout your life and throughout your practice of this, even going back to when you were 12, are there other significant experiences that you've had with maybe communicating with any other entities or things that might have been very significant to you personally on your path with
Ooh.
this?
I have mystical, paranormal, and supernatural experiences every day.
Every day.
My every day. My life it's weird. And it just seems to get weirder. I had one instance where I was at the loony bin and I was sitting there wearing earplugs with next to this girl who was also wearing earplugs because we were both voice hearers.
Oh, okay.
And she was just staring at the wall and she takes her earplugs out for a second and kind of listens. And she looks at me and she goes, "You're going to help a lot of people." And I got chills all over me. Like, it's like,
Oh,
I
that's
already knew that, but how did she?
oh, that's so. But what a wonderful confirmation for you.
Right, right. It happens all the time, all the time.
That's, I mean, but I think a little bit of testimony to how, the universe doesn't make mistakes. It's trying to give you signs all the time,
Right.
and messages from whoever it can get a message to you from.
Yes, absolutely.
So, can you talk a little bit more about that, or just have, a few more stories or experiences? So your life is kind
Yeah.
of, as much as you've gone through chaos and hell, you have magical experiences.
Right, right. I well, sometimes they're very cryptic and weird. Like sometimes they don't make sense at first.
Hmm.
Before I just had my emergency surgery back in February. Um, but years before when I was like 27 or 28, I was having these voices and they were telling me, "Don't eat, you have emergency surgery. Don't eat, you have emergency surgery." And then they would tell me, "Don't think, don't breathe, don't move." It was like practice for being in an MRI machine. It
Oh,
was weird.
really?
Yeah, they tell me lay there, don't think, don't move, don't breathe, don't blink. And I'd like hold my breath and just like lay really still. And I didn't know what was going on. I'd have kind of flashes of me like in a hospital bed with a bunch of people standing around me, stuff like that. And I kept telling people around me, I'm like, something's wrong with me. I need to go to the hospital. Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me. And
Hmm.
I've been in chronic pain for like a long time, since I was like early 20s, so everybody was like, "Oh, well, it's sciatica and blah, 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 and doctors, this, and that, and the other." Nobody would listen to me,
Would take it
you know?
seriously.
Right, exactly. Well, there I am, February, after my emergency surgery, sitting there looking at my mom, and I kind of look over at her and I'm like, "Hey, mom, you remember when I told you I needed emergency surgery?"
Like, you remember when I totally told you that this was going to happen?
Right. She was just kind of like, "Yes," because at this point, that's what it's like. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, we've heard it.
Yes, exactly.
Well, so can you, and this is maybe a little, do you ever have experiences then in dream state? Do you communicate at all with entities or energies in dream state, or is it only when you're waking? Do your dreams play into this for you at all?
Um, I've actually like around the time the voice hearing was getting really bad, like so bad I would go catatonic when I was talking to people. Um, I
Because
was
they were
even
that just
yes, because they were that
distracting?
loud, yes, and
Wow.
distracting. I I was having dreams, and even in the dreams I was hearing voices. It was like I would be having the dream, and in the dream I was hearing voices in my head, and they would be telling me all like whatever they needed to tell me. It
So
got very intense. So even in my dreams, yes.
so even in your dream state, they're sort of interrupting your consciousness. You're not necessarily seeing them, but in the dream experience, you are still hearing voices in your head.
Right.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I
So,
felt so too.
because the dream state and sort of the communication you can sometimes receive through dreams is another thing that does fascinate me, and sort of trying to interpret the messaging. Do you do any sort of assistance with for people with sort of messages that they might be receiving that they don't understand or know how to interpret?
I don't do a whole lot of dream interpretation just because I feel like you kind of have to do that yourself. Only you are going to really understand the symbols and the meanings and, what your subconscious like basically cooks up for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can tell you all day what I think your dream means, but like really like, I'm not really going to know like somewhere in there. I
Right.
could
Like,
pull your cards maybe and try to like pull it out of you, but I like can't really like interpret via like symbolism because like a bus for me is going to mean something different than a bus for you.
right. So maybe more just the sort of guiding someone to working through their own personal, okay, well, what does that mean to you? Kind of, sort of a communication with your own subconscious, with your own inner self in order
Right.
to draw out what did that actually mean.
Right.
Oh, very cool. So, do you have, and I know I asked you this, would you ever consider doing maybe sort of like a masterclass sort of thing, or teaching people in terms of the connecting to their own intuitiveness and learning to trust their own instincts and their own voices in their head, whatever they may be.
Yes, actually, Emerix's Tarot Academy will be on my stand store.
So you are
ASAP.
starting.
I've been actually the last few days. I have written up a lesson plan on my lessons. It's like a 125 page, 12-week course.
Wow.
Yes, I've been working very hard on it. I'm very
Uh,
excited to launch it. I
very
do want to make,
intensive.
yes, I do want to make videos for each lesson. So that's the only thing I have left to do. That way I'm like walking you through it. For anybody the notes are for like just so you'll have them, but for anybody who doesn't want to sit there and read, like they would like something more like, up front or whatever, like I'm going to be like pulling cards and giving examples and stuff like that on the video, so yeah, I'm super excited.
Very cool. That's awesome. Because I'm sure that again that there are a lot of people who are, not just curious about this getting answers for themselves, but like how can I tap into what this thing that I know that I have within me, that this ability to connect, because we do all have that ability, and you can call it psychic or call it whatever. Like we do all have that connection to each other and to, again, source, God, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's a part of the upgrade that's happening, right? Or a part of the mission to help people to recognize that, to bring them to it in a whatever way is most helpful to them. That's
Right.
amazing. That's really awesome. I'm glad to hear you're starting a class. That's really cool.
I'm very excited. I was excited to see that you could do it on Stand Story. You could actually like set up the courses to where it'll send like every week and stuff like that. So
So
super cool.
through a full process in 12 weeks. That's
Right. And you get a certificate at the end.
there you go. I love it.
Yep.
That's amazing. So would you have any sort of final thoughts that you might want to share, or any messages just for the audience in general?
I don't know. It just, I guess for the general, like it's just super important that we all like raise our vibration, y'all. It is so important. It's so important. Like the earth is not doing well, you guys. Like we're teetering on between darkness and light right now. And it's very important that we collectively raise our vibration and make our interactions more positive.
Do you have any sort of techniques or suggestions for people in terms of just raising their vibration personally?
I mean, there's a few different ways to do it. You can do it with food. You could do it with, I mean, probably the best way is kind of just like emotional transmutation, and like alchemy, like emotional alchemy. You want to like definitely live in like unconditional love and compassion and, acceptance, and not like fear, guilt, shame, because those are so like low vibrational. But I found, something that works good is if you can identify the opposite of the emotion you're having, you can kind of slide the scale to it. Like say you're really scared, if you can pump yourself up to almost get like overconfident, you can like slide your scale a little bit,
Okay. I do agree. And I think that that's something that, I mean, probably people might need assistance from a class like yours, because it can be a tough thing, I think, because the lower vibrational emotions, at least in my own experience, they can feel like things that you get stuck in or trapped in. It's kind of like a quicksand sort of situation. You find yourself in it and you don't mean to, and then you suddenly can't get yourself out of it.
Right. The fake it till you make it thing, it kind of does work.
Okay, what would I prefer? What would that feel like? Okay, really push
Right.
yourself to imagine it. And it's, I know it can be an exhausting process, but it is so important to, to your own growth, to your own ability to love yourself. And that translates into the way that you interact with the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, so can you give us just tell the audience where to find you again, your email and your TikTok, and we'll definitely link it, but can you tell everyone where to find you?
Yes. Well, my name, Emerix, you can basically Google that, and nobody else has that name. It actually like came to me in like what they would call psychosis. But so you can basically Google me, but also 𝓕𝓻𝓪𝓷𝓴𝓲 or at TikTok.
Okay, Tarot by Emerix.
Yes.
Okay, and that's Emerix.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. I'm so glad that you agreed to come onto the show and to talk to the audience. And I'm really excited to see where you go from here. And I'm just so grateful that you agreed to come on. This was a really great conversation.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Thank you.
Seeking clarity? Just ask Emerix at Tarot by Emerix on TikTok. Self-taught, Louisiana native, 20 years experience, specializing in love and relationships. Get your tarot reading today at Tarot by Emerix on TikTok. Open your mind to the divine.
That was my interview with Emerix and a nice little ad or commercial that she made for herself right there at the end. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And thank you so much to Emerix for being willing to be a guest on my show. I really enjoyed our conversation. You can find Emerix at Tarot by Emerix. That's EMERIX at gmail.com. And also Tarot by Emerix on TikTok. If you'd like to support more content from me, with the Franki 411 podcast or my fictional podcast, The Adventures of 𝓕𝓻𝓪𝓷𝓴𝓲, which you can also find wherever you're listening to this podcast. You can certainly check out my Patreon. That's patreon.com/𝓕𝓻𝓪𝓷𝓴𝓲. Every little bit of support truly does help. This is my passion, talking about human consciousness and exploring these amazing realms and these different conversations. I would absolutely love it if you would support me on Patreon. I so appreciate everyone who likes, shares, subscribes, listens. Honestly, it really is truly a treat to be able to share these things with all of you. So thank you so much for listening. Until next time, much love to you, my earthbound and cosmic friends. Wherever you are out there, I hope you're doing well.